If there's one attribute that we hear being talked about more than any other in football, it might just be consistency. The best players have it, the best managers have it, and indeed, the best teams must have it if they are to win league championships. Whilst you could argue that it is Lionel Messi's vision, technique, and mastery over a ball that has made him one of the greatest players of all time, and that in the case of Ronaldo, it is simply his attacking movement, aerial ability, and technique when striking a ball, the thing that is actually most remarkable about both of them is their consistency and longevity for more than 15 years at the very highest level. So they are two fine examples of consistent performers over a number of years, but today we are more interested in the exact opposite. That is to say, players who lurch from one extreme to the other in terms of their performance levels on a virtually weekly basis. It's not quite as easy to define inconsistency in football as one might think. Some players, like Jamie Vardy, are statistically very inconsistent, enjoying purple patches of form in which he is highly prolific, often followed by lengthy barren spells where he can struggle to get involved. Yet, he probably isn't a name that many people would immediately think of if you asked them to name inconsistent players. So there are players, like Vardy, who are inconsistent week to week, but are fairly consistent from season to season, who tend to be forward players, and there are also those who statistically appear to be inconsistent, but most people wouldn't think of labelling in that way, and finally also those who the statistics suggest are perhaps a little unfairly labelled or thought of as being inconsistent. I have tried to combine all of those factors, as accurately as I possibly can, to come up with 7 of the most inconsistent players in all of world football. And here's how I got on. 7th, James Maddison. This one might seem harsh, and I like James Maddison a lot, but however you look at it, he is extremely inconsistent. Signed by Leicester City for around £20 million in 2018 as a replacement for Riyad Mahrez, Maddison made a blistering start to life in the Premier League. 5 goal contributions in his first 7 top-flight outings quickly made Maddison a favourite among fantasy Premier League managers, and there was even talk of whether he could go on to eclipse the Algerian who he had replaced. But that excitement pretty quickly dampened down as Maddison's only notable contribution in the following 5 fixtures was a red card, which he received in the 28th minute of a game against Brighton and Hove Albion. In many respects, Maddison's turbulent start to life at Leicester has foreshadowed the following 3.5 years, during which time he has fluctuated from the brilliant to the absent. Few players in the Premier League go through such concentrated periods of scoring and creating goals, followed by such extended periods of providing very little. When he is at his best, Maddison is brilliant at convincing you that he has turned a corner, and that he is just going to be this good permanently from now on. I know that he has certainly fooled me on many occasions. In his defence, Maddison only very recently turned 25, so he is still relatively young, but this season has been more of the same once again. Maddison went 11 games without a goal or an assist at the start of this season, being dropped to the bench on 5 occasions. A couple of good games against Legia Warsaw and Brighton were followed by a rotten few games before he began a barnstorming run of form, scoring, assisting, and winning the Man of the Match award 4 times in the space of just 7 games. If he could maintain that kind of form across an entire season, he would be one of the best players in the division and he would be starting games for England. As it is, he is still a real asset to Leicester City, but his inconsistency will continue to frustrate. 6th, Serge Aurier. It's one thing for a forward, wide man or number 10 to be inconsistent, but it is another thing entirely for your defenders' performances to be up and down like a jack-in-the-box. Tottenham fans know all too well about the dangers of employing inconsistent defenders, having witnessed Serge Aurier in action for all of 4 seasons. Aurier struggled to nail down a starting berth at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, for obvious reasons, with the exception of the 2019-20 campaign when he made 42 appearances in all competitions. The Ivorian international certainly has his talents. He is quick, aggressive, and loves to bomb forward. At his best, Aurier looks like a very impressive modern-day fullback, strong in the tackle, whilst always looking to get into advanced positions and attack. However, whether it be at PSG, Tottenham, or now in his first season at Villarreal, Aurier has always been hopelessly inconsistent. 1 in 5 games, he absolutely dominates the right flank. In 3 of those 5 games, he will do something stupid. Tottenham had Kieran Trippier and Kyle Walker-Peters at the club when they signed Aurier for £23 million in 2017. Quite frankly, I think they would have been far better off keeping hold of the two of them and saving the cash. Aurier has so far played only 6 games for Villarreal, and, true to form, one of them was excellent against Getafe, and one of them was a Derby Day disaster against Valencia. At the age of 29, it is probably safe to assume that Serge will never change. 5th, Eric Bailly. Continuing in a similar theme, if there is one thing worse than an inconsistent fullback, it must surely be an inconsistent centre-back. That is exactly what, I would contend, Eric Bailly is. It should be said that Manchester United probably had the most candidates for this 7 of any club, along with Lyon, which perhaps tells you something about their current set of circumstances. Eric Bailly has all of the tools required to become a top-class centre-back. After joining Manchester United in 2016 for a hefty £30 million fee, Bailly was excellent. He won the Man of the Match award in the Community Shield at Wembley Stadium on his debut, and he even won the club's Player of the Month award for August 2016. However, in October, he suffered a serious injury setback, sustaining some fairly complicated knee ligament damage. Bailly was just 22 years old at the time, now he is 27, but he has been plagued by further injury setbacks and inconsistency ever since. I honestly think that Eric Bailly, at his best, is easily a top 10 centre-back in the Premier League. He is quick, strong, brave, firm in the challenge, and he's capable of marking even a top-class centre-forward out of a game for a full 90 minutes. We have seen Bailly do just that on a number of occasions, but we've also seen him look like a total liability. This season, despite only having played a handful of games, Bailly has impressed against the likes of West Ham, Young Boys, and Atalanta, whilst dropping a clanger against Manchester City, and whilst his overall performance was fine, also being singled out by Ralf Rangnick for a mistake that he made against Burnley just a few weeks ago. Bailly has made a solid start to the 2021 AFCON, impressing as Ivory Coast kept a clean sheet against Equatorial Guinea. But I wouldn't bet against him doing something really daft at the tournament in Cameroon before this video even comes out. And that pretty much sums him up. 4th, David Neres. As I was quite literally in the process of recording this segment about David Neres, the Brazilian agreed a potential €17 million move from Ajax to Shakhtar Donetsk. It is probably not the worst move for the 24-year-old, joining a club and a division where Brazilian players have long thrived. But were he not quite so inconsistent, I think we might be talking about him signing for a much bigger club for a much larger fee. Very long-term subscribers to this channel may recall me singing David Neres' praises around 4 years ago, and I thought he looked to have what it takes to make it to the very top. In my defence, Neres did go on to score 14 goals for Ajax in the 2017-18 season, a campaign in which he turned 20 years old, and I still think that he has all the attributes to become a first-team player for Brazil. Neres is quick, he has good attacking movement, fantastic technique, and he has shown that he knows where the goal is on more than one occasion. The problem, however, as you have probably anticipated, is that he doesn't always combine those attributes to produce routinely brilliant performances on a weekly basis. Indeed, Neres has never improved upon that 2017-18 season and has shown signs of regression. Neres is known to be a very relaxed and laid-back character, leading to what I must stress are entirely unsubstantiated rumours and jokes about him smoking weed in Amsterdam. Again, I must stress, I am not saying that he does that. I'm just saying that people joke about it based on how laid back he is. That has perhaps damaged his development, but above all else, Neres is just unbelievably inconsistent. Among the most inconsistent players in the entire world, in fact. Perhaps he will have fewer distractions at Shakhtar and will be able to get into a bit more of a rhythm there because there can be no doubts about his potential. 3rd, Marco Asensio. There was a lot of excitement surrounding Marco Asensio when he joined Real Madrid from Mallorca in 2014, and for good reason. Still in his teens at the time, Asensio had proven himself to be a real talent in Mallorca, where he was among the best players in the Segunda Division, even at that age. He backed that up with a season on loan with Espanyol in La Liga, where his performances caught the eye once again. Versatile and inventive, Asensio has excellent technique and a wonderful left foot. A Marco Asensio highlight reel would be a joy to watch, and he hit double figures for goals in each of his first 2 seasons in Madrid. As with Neres though, in spite of his early promise, Asensio has not only failed to push on and become a star man at Real Madrid, I would argue that his performance levels have actually regressed. Occasionally he still exhibits his obvious natural ability and dead-eyed left foot, such as with the hat-trick that he scored against Mallorca earlier this season, but every performance like that is followed by 2 or 3 really insipid ones. Vinicius Jr., who not so long ago was being talked about as his equal, is now so many levels ahead of him, despite being 4 years his junior, if you will pardon the pun, that he can no longer even see Asensio in his rearview mirror. Asensio's performances are all over the place, and whilst there are some teams where you might get away with that, Real Madrid have not historically been one of them. He has still made 10 starts and 17 appearances for Carlo Ancelotti's side this season, but although Los Blancos are currently flying high at the top of the La Liga table, I still know a number of Madrid fans who bemoan Asensio's continued game time, and feel as though it is high time the likes of Brahim Diaz, who is currently on loan at AC Milan, got given a chance. Second, Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba was the first player that I thought of when I decided that I should make a video about inconsistent players, but I wanted to take a proper look into whether he actually merited an inclusion. I think some of the coverage of Paul Pogba since he returned to Manchester United has been uncharitable at best and outright racist at worst. I don't mean people critiquing his performances, of course, we've all done that, but the obsession with his hairstyles and the way he has been lambasted for doing things that players of a different complexion would never have been pulled up on seems to me to be more than a little suspect. Even with a more charitable hat on though, and whilst deploring that type of behaviour, I do still think that Paul Pogba is among the most inconsistent players in all of world football. When you watch Pogba at his best, you are left with little doubt that you just witnessed a generational talent and one of the most gifted footballers on the planet. He is 6'3" tall, he can outrun players, outmuscle them, and intercept a pass, whilst having the feet of a world-class wide man or diminutive number 10, mouth-watering technique, and the ability to find the back of the net. Pogba is one of only very few players capable of turning just about any game of football on its head in an instant, and in so many different ways. He makes defence-splitting passes look simple, he can glide past 3 or 4 defenders as though they weren't even there, and as he showed against Manchester City just a few years ago, he is capable of popping up with a couple of headers when your team is 2-0 down. But that is the thing with Pogba. For the last 5+ years at least, he is equally capable of scoring 2 goals or making 3 assists in 30 minutes as he is of scoring 2 goals and making 3 assists across an entire season. There aren't many players who you can say that about, and with his form having been all over the place once again this season, whilst he was actually playing at least, I think he had to make my top 3. First, Nicolas Pepe. Staying in the Premier League for top spot, Arsenal are another club who had a couple of players who made my shortlist. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Alexander Lacazette have both been fairly inconsistent this season. Meanwhile, Granit Xhaka is at least consistent in how inconsistent he is, doing something absolutely mental once every 5 games, as though it were clockwork. Nicolas Pepe, though, is arguably the most inconsistent player in world football right now, at least playing top-flight football, which is where I limited my scope, for obvious reasons. Signed by Arsenal from Lille for £72 million, whilst that fee always seems steep, I have been impressed every time I watched Pepe in action in Ligue 1. Rapid, both on and off the ball, and in possession of a wicked left foot, Pepe made 33 goal contributions in 37 league games during his final season in France. He has barely made that number of goal contributions across his entire 2.5 seasons and more than 100 appearances at Arsenal. Pepe is, to me at least, a very one-dimensional footballer. He is very good on the ball and he is capable of finding the back of the net brilliantly, particularly when cutting inside onto his favoured left foot. Outside of that, there really isn't much more to his game. His vision and awareness can often be found wanting, he contributes next to nothing defensively, and his crossing, whilst occasionally brilliant, frequently leaves an awful lot to be desired. I suspect that there is a system which plays solely upon his strengths in which Pepe could flourish, but right now he is far too inconsistent and incomplete to ever come close to justifying his enormous transfer fee. You can count Pepe's genuinely impressive performances so far this season on one hand, and his two best came in the League Cup against Sunderland and West Brom, which perhaps tells you something or another. In the league, he has been a passenger or worse in games against Chelsea and Crystal Palace, along with a handful of typically inconsistent cameo appearances. All things considered, I think Pepe is arguably the most inconsistent player on the planet, and if not, he certainly comes close. So that is it for today's video, but honourable mentions go to Jamie Vardy, Gareth Bale, Anthony Martial, Isco, Moussa Dembele, Xherdan Shaqiri, Granit Xhaka, Tanguy Ndombele, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and Alexander Isak, among many others. Some players missed out because I don't think they're inconsistent anymore. They just either don't play or are just consistently bad. You know, Kevin Prince Boateng, for example. Anyway, thank you all very much as ever for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video. I sincerely hope that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure you are subscribed, of course, and have notifications turned on for the one and only HITC Sevens, the most inconsistent channel on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter and on Instagram via the username @HITC Sevens, should you wish to do so.